Hello and welcome to Some of My Friends Read Comics. We've got Vance.
I got 3 new Gumby videotapes in the mail today.
We got Chris.
Oh my god, the last 4 years were just a nightmare.
And I'm Kia. Hi, welcome to the show. We're reading a bunch of different stuff here today. Vince, what was your quote from? I don't remember that Gumby.
Is it The Thing? It's
Beast.
It's Beast. Yeah, no, it was Beast. And then he's mad. I don't remember why Beast... Was it Beast in the Defenders issue? Was talking about his Gumby? Okay.
Yes, when they were all on the car together.
Yeah. There's a follow-up quote, too, that's pretty darn good, but I don't have it written down in my notes.
We'll get to it in a second here. Hi, welcome to the show. Okay, so today, for this episode, we are covering Marvel's Assistant Editors Month. This was 1984, did we say it was?
Yes.
1980? Yeah. When... all the main editors were away for Comic-Con and like the Eisner Awards and everything was happening. And so for 1 month, they left the assistant editors in charge. And, you know, the story is that everything is going off the rails because the assistant editors are in charge this month and they're just having a good time. So all of their books this month had a stamp on it that said, "It's Assistant Editors Month. Don't say we didn't warn you," or whatever it says. Warning the reader that we don't promise quality with these issues.
and like most emblematic of it is like there's a book and it's not even a what if book. It's Marvel team up Aunt May and Franklin Richards team up to fight Galactus. Like that's where we're at. Like
that's on the cover,
yeah.
It's there's some fun stuff. We've got some of the issues are just little side stories. Some of them, like the Avengers one that we're going to read, is the Avengers going on David Letterman and having an adventure there. So a few different examples of this. We're going to read 5 different issues today. Yeah. We're going to start with Defenders number 127. And Go ahead.
Let me set the table a little bit. I mentioned earlier This is my favorite era of Marvel Comics. So the editors that are gone are Al Milgrom, who I don't think we talked about that much, but he did work on Secret Wars 2. He was the artist. He's a bad artist, a good editor. Denny O'Neil, who we talked about a lot on the show. He recently died. Larry Hama, who did G.I. Joe. I don't know if we've covered him for the show. Louise Simonson, at the time, Louise Jones. Tom DeFalco, Ralph Macchio, and Bob Budiansky, and Mark Grunwald. So that, I don't know if you've heard of all of those guys, but we've covered most of them at some point.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Mark Grunwald a lot at the end of the episode here as well. But yeah, fairly big names in the editorial biz. And yeah, you just some of the really interesting things they were doing in comics around now. But yeah, we're gonna touch on a little bit of everything. Defenders 127, Dazzler number 30, Avengers 239, The Thing number 7, and Marvel Team Up number 137. And of course, afterwards, we're going to continue our reading of JLA and Avengers. This is the last issue. We're on number 4, JLA Avengers number 4, which is going to end our Marvel DC crossover kind of run that we've been doing. Although, you know, even the next one, we'll get to what we're doing next time here, but even that has a little bit of a Marvel DC kind of cross feeling to it. We'll get to that. But yeah, so I think we're going to start with Defenders number 127. Anything else we really need to do before we dive right in here?
No.
I mean, I guess if you have specific questions about who's where and what's going on and the continuity, you can ask me. But let's address that stuff as it comes up. Let's just get into it.
Yeah, I think so. And with Defenders, there's a lot of continuity. Really, this is just a first a couple pages at the beginning where it's really silly. Like the editors are away, so Super Editor is here to take over. Blah blah blah. And it's just like a fun little bit. This was Ann Nesenti, right?
And art by Marie Severin,
yes.
Who I think she did Not Brand Ek.
Yes.
And we've talked about her. She recently passed, and
it
definitely has like a Not Brand Ek Mad Magazine kind of vibe for the art. It's only 2 pages, but I feel like it really sets the tone for what we're talking about with Marvel Assistant Editors Month. Like it's very silly, but it's also like hyper aware and like postmodern in the respect that like the people who make Marvel comics are the characters, and like I guess everybody had like nicknames. I know that Stan Lee did that. Did that continue in the 80s, Chris? Where like people were aware of who the editors were and they were self-inserting themselves into the comics?
Yeah, not like this though.
Not like this. Okay.
It's not like these characters all had their own, nicknames and things. It is kind of funny because I do know like what these characters look like mostly because of like these things. Like that. Later we'll see like a cartoon version of Ralph Macchio that really is not very flattering.
Yeah, but I mean, like, but Jim Shooter looks flippin'.
He's legit he's like 6'6" or 6'7". Like he's a giant dude, and they draw him like super buff.
Oh man, that's great.
But yeah, holding a Garfield doll. But that's another issue.
That's another issue.
But super editor's in here, and she's like letting everybody do whatever they want with their books. Her seniority makes her editor in chief for a month, and then and then she just gets like sabotaged by the fact that she has to think about like printing costs and getting erasers, and then just like kind of ends the issue.
Yeah, and then it gets into like a regular Defenders issue, which I'll be honest, I didn't read. I was like, this. I don't know who any of these people are.
It's only funny to me because in a later issue that we're actually going to read, Beast is talking about leaving the Avengers to go join the Defenders. So he's in here, and he talks about the Gumby. He gets his Gumby videotapes in, and then he says, and I quote, "So help me if they so much as touch those Gumby tapes." And somebody in the background who I don't know goes, "Here we go again."
I think that was a Candy, Angel's girlfriend.
But I love, and my only part that I really, because this was like a normal superhero issue to this point, and I don't really care that much. But I do love that like Iceman was talking to his parents and goes, "Mom, Dad, you don't need to worry about me. I'm no longer a superhero." And then the next panel he goes, "Also, I'm going to be a superhero again." Like in the next panel.
I do love how needlessly overdramatic it is that he he's wearing like a yellow sweater, and then when he like ices up, you see his sweater like breaking apart as it's frozen. I'm like, dude, you didn't have to do that.
There was some fun visual stuff in this issue for sure. I'm glad I flipped through it. I felt bad because I was like, I know this is Chris's favorite era of Marvel. Is he gonna be mad at me if I don't read all of the Defenders?
I mean, I'm not like a Defenders super fan. Is it? I think it's Sal Buscema that does the art here.
Yeah,
he's very.
It looked good. Yeah,
he's very classic of the time. Like he was doing like 2 books a month pretty regularly at this time. So it's not like the best quality art, but like he's very consistent.
Yeah, and I definitely do want to read some Defenders at some point. Like it's one of those things we've never even really talked about, have we? I don't think so.
The feeling I get with Defenders is though it's just like another team that has a completely like inconsistent cast. Like,
yeah.
Like I don't know who like the core Defender group is. I feel like Doctor Strange is part of the core Defenders, but it just seems like another team to have a bunch of heroes. Like in this one, it's Iceman and Beast. I'm like, why are they in an X-Men book? And then Moondragon shows up, and I'm like, hey, I do know you, Moondragon.
Yeah,
We've talked about this. Because every time other Moondragons showed up, I've been like, I don't know who this is, but I do know who she is.
Yeah, I was gonna say we've done Infinity Gauntlet and all that stuff now, so you should know who Moondragon is.
Right. Yeah.
And it's J. DeMatteis on writing, who I don't know if we've ever read anything of his in this show that's been good, but I really liked Kraven's Last Hunt back in the day. So. He's been a good writer for me, just never on our podcast. So
yeah. Well, there we go. Anything else about
Valkyrie's also on this team?
Valkyrie,
right. And she's one of the mainstays. Yeah,
Valkyrie's one of the mainstays once she joins the team, because originally it's like Hulk, Silver Surfer, Doctor Strange, and like a lot of them, and Namor, and a lot of them come and go. But like Nighthawk, Valkyrie, those guys stick around because they don't have another book to be in.
Yeah, we'll talk about Nighthawk at some point as well later today. Interesting. We're giving away a lot of clues as to what we're reading. Ooh. All right. Let's go on to Dazzler now. Dazzler number 30. So this was... who wrote this one? I didn't write this one down. I don't know. I didn't write down all the creative teams on all these individual issues here.
The arts are really good in it, though. It's Ken McDonald and Frank Springer. Which
there we go.
I really like the Frank. I don't know if it's the coloring or the penciling in here, but it looks really good. It looks not like a comic book, the other comics we've read, and I think it's just the way that like the mountains are drawn, the texturing just looks really really good. So
there's a lot of really great art throughout all of these that we've been reading this month here. Chris, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I don't know Frank Springer, but I like this art. I thought this was pretty good. It's not like Sal Buscema is exactly the Marvel House style. Like he's kind of one of the, like him and his brother John kind of helped make it. But this is not the House style, but I like it.
Yeah. But the whole first half of this is very loosely connected, not really too connected to Assistant Editors Month. They're out in San Diego.
Well, no, yeah. Well, like Dazzler is a superhero, but she's also like a celebrity, like a singer.
Right.
And she's got some like machinations with her agent and blah 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 blah. But actually, like, and the book doesn't go here because she gets a long-winded way that she gets pissed off with L.A. and then just decides to leave L.A. and she runs into Ralph Macchio, not the Karate Kid, and ends up he says like, hey, you want to ride? Like, but like not in it. I'm like, this is going to turn rapey, but it didn't turn rapey because it turns out it was a Marvel editor. And he was like, hey, let me help you out. I'll take you where you want to go. I'll give you some money. Just be on your way. I just want to make sure you're safe. And she's like, I want to go to. He's like, I'll go wherever you're going. He's going. I'm going to San Diego, presumably for Comic-Con, which is really a long-winded way because I'm thinking you could make this exact story with Dazzler today, saying like she's a celebrity. Of course, she's just going to be at Comic-Con for her movie, and you've gotten her the same way without like this like weird convoluted way. But it would happen. I was kind of like, oh, they should just do this. Like, if there's a celebrity in the Marvel universe, have them show up at Comic-Con because they would, because it's a Hollywood celebrity thing.
It makes sense.
But I do like, and then there's a B plot where Bob Harris,
Yes,
who he's an assistant editor at this point, and he's trying to stage a coup of Marvel.
Former head of DC Comics until like a week ago, right?
Editor in chief of DC Comics fired. They laid off their editor in chief. They let Dan DiDio go, I think, like in February of this year. So Bob Harris was recently promoted, and I feel like he's been at high positions in DC over the last 20 years.
And the last 10 years or so, he's been in DC pretty high up.
I think he either started the Ultimate line or did like Heroes Reborn or something like that. Like he's continuously a figure that's tried to shed continuity and do reboots in the respective universes. But he was a big deal.
I love his slow power trip in this in this issue too, because it doesn't start off with like him immediately saying, "Great, we're gonna change everything." It's just like, well, hey, we're gonna change this first. And hey, maybe this, and maybe this will be great. And it's like, and he's suddenly like. He's always expecting Ralph to like call him and like tell him exactly what to do and blah blah blah, and Ralph hasn't done that at all. Ralph hasn't even checked in. He's not there to be his usual overbearing self, and so the build with Bob Harris is just so wonderful to watch. By the end of this issue, he's on the tables dancing, and the art here these are my panels of the week right here. Of him just like pointing in this direction. It's like, we're going to change this, and then we're going to change that, and like pointing it up until Ralph finally does call him. And
that's a good panel of the week of him dancing on the table. Yeah, it's really good.
And him just shattered. His soul is just like sucked out of his body, and he's just like, oh, okay, yeah, we'll do it the regular way.
Yeah, and we also get to see Anna Senti drawn a different way as she's like egging him on, being like, why are you calling him every week? Like, you can do whatever you want now. So it's crossover with the last issue. She's driving everyone mad with power. And then we also have Danny Fingeroth. He's the guy with the afro of hair.
Yes.
And he'll come up later.
Oh, man.
I really like this, though. Like, it makes me sad. I know that there was like a wah-huh issue in the era of like Marvel Comics when I was really like into them, like in the mid 2000s. But like, man, I would have loved to have seen like a Matt Fraction and like Ed Brubaker taking the piss out of Brian Michael Bendis, issue or something like that. Like, I think that would have been a lot of fun. I mean, there was an issue of Powers where Warren Ellis got murdered, and that was pretty funny. But I always loved this kind of stuff, just like the little peek behind the curtain and like poking fun at themselves and making fun of each other. Like, I like this kind of world, and I think the Thing issue really captures that well. But
we'll get to that one in a second. I think we're ready to move on to Avengers 137.
Right. Do we mention Dazzler then saves Ralph Macchio and gives him his $20 back that he loaned her, and then calls Bob Harris, who is standing on a table, and he's like, I want every dialogue box colored red. And it's colored in red. And then he's like, oh, the phone for you? And then as he's talking to him, like the dialogue box has gradually turned white again. Like, that's genuinely funny.
Yeah. It's a good touch. Good touch.
There's a whole dinosaur fight in this thing that we just didn't mention because
yeah.
a dinosaur attacks
honestly,
whatever.
I forgot this was a Dazzler issue by the end of it. She just kind of wasn't important to the story here.
Yeah, it is funny. It's like we don't think of Dazzler as being that important, but there does seem to be like a dedicated opposition to Dazzler, where they're like, we're gonna make her use her powers in a public place, and that'll discredit her. And it's like, who are you? Who cares?
Yeah, I was very confused by. Again, I didn't want to get too invested. We're just doing one-off issues here, but I was like, and the government's after her or something.
Yeah, she's like the Hulk out here.
Yeah,
got to stop the Dazzler.
Yeah. Thunderbolt Ross. I gotta get that Dazzler. I don't think that was him in this issue at all. I'm just saying.
No.
All right. So
he's actually on the cover of the Incredible Hulk for the Assistant Editors Month with a gun to his head, in a cover you could not do today.
Yikes. All right, so let's move on to Avengers now. So in Avengers 137, again, we kind of might have to talk a little bit about the status quo, but they do mirror this story a little bit, where like all the big Avengers are away doing something else. Hawkeye and Mockingbird, who have just gotten married. Have we talked about Mockingbird on the show at all? I don't know that we have.
Yeah, I don't know where we would.
Yeah.
We never talked about Secret Invasion, and what a pile of garbage that was.
Well,
she may have been in JLA Avengers, but I'm thinking maybe of Black Canary.
Yeah,
they have a similar color
scheme.
She
was a cameo because she's very similar in character and purpose to Black Canary.
With color scheme too, with the blue and black. Yeah.
Yeah.
She is a SHIELD agent type, I believe. I know that maybe I'm just thinking that because of Agents of SHIELD. She was a character on that show for a few seasons.
They tried several spin-offs for her Mockingbird, if I'm not mistaken.
Did they?
There's several backdoor pilots for a Mockingbird show that never got off the ground.
Yeah,
interesting.
It's what's her name from Friday Night Lights.
It's Adrian
right?
Pilecki, who also played the Wonder Woman in that pilot that never went anywhere.
Oh, wow. Well, she was cool on that show for sure.
Yeah, I like her. But she's on... what's she on? I can't remember. Orville. She's on Orville now. She's good.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, good for her.
So there you go. That's Mockingbird for you. But Hawkeye and Mockingbird are
married to
newlyweds.
Jeremy Renner's character Hawkeye.
Yes.
You might know him. Yeah. But they got married. They're newlyweds. And they get back to the mansion. Vision's the only one who's there, floating head.
Yep.
And
can y'all tell that there's a subplot where Vision is about to turn evil on them?
I wasn't looking for it.
I wasn't looking for it, but there was something going on there.
Because he's like so happy. Like this whole issue, I was like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, there was something. He was like, I've got everything, like everything is under my control. Don't worry about it. That line or something like that was like, what's going on with Vision here?
Yeah, and he does mention, he's like, no, don't worry about it. I just bonded my mind with an alien entity robot, and it just made me much stronger. And now I'm a very carefree guy, like we all know the Vision to be.
That was a little weird, but yeah, I guess they're just planting some seeds for future stuff. Meanwhile, the big plot is that the Avengers are scheduled to be on Letterman tonight, or they get an offer out of nowhere or something like that.
Wonder Man, who's also like a celebrity. Again, I don't think we've talked much about Wonder Man. Simon something. And Simon Williams. He's been booked to be on Letterman, and they wanted to bring the whole Avengers team. And Letterman, David Letterman was in the. This dates me. He's in the. Who's in that slot now? Seth Meyers. Yeah, it's Seth Meyers. It was the old Jimmy Fallon slot, the old Conan slot. And before
he's on NBC at this
the
point.
Late night,
the later night NBC.
The show after Carson.
Right.
So he was doing like the cool hip comedy for people our age. Conan was in his slot doing the kind of more fun comedy
That pattern is so interesting to me. Also, of just like start later and then move a little bit earlier as you get more popular.
Right. And yeah. I mean, well, we got older with Conan, and it was like, I can't.
Oh yeah. Also, as your audience gets older, they go to sleep earlier, so you gotta move up.
Like Conan's only like at 9 now, I think, or something. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't stay up, to watch Craig Ferguson like I could, 15 years ago.
Oh man, yeah. So they gather as many of the Avengers that are like able to show up It's none of the main ones. They got Hawkeye.
I'm so sad that like Black Panther like didn't have any funny lines because I really wanted to like pull out like a funny Black Panther panel of them calling like, yeah, sure, I'll go on Letterman. He does go on Letterman, but he doesn't say anything.
He does. Yeah, Black Panther.
And it's weird that he would even want to do that. Like,
I have a feeling he just doesn't know what's going on at all. Is why he doesn't say anything. Black Panther is confused.
He's probably doing some like platform. He's like, yeah, I'll do something for NBC. I'll like do a UN platform thing. Yeah, that's great. Sounds good.
I'll call the head of NBC and be like, now you owe me a favor. It is very funny because it's like desperation from Simon, where he's just like, I can't get booked on Letterman unless it does an Avenger.
Yeah, and so Hawkeye's like the only actual current Avenger there, so he's got to do the talking. He's concerned. This is my favorite side plot in this book. He does not. He has one bad ear, and so he's not going to be able to hear David Letterman's questions. And so Mockingbird gets him a list of the questions that Letterman is going to ask, so that he'll be prepared ahead of time.
And Mockingbird even says, like, just wear a hearing aid. Like, we have one.
Yeah.
He's like, no.
Yeah. I can't let anyone know. It's going to ruin my persona. And so
people think I'm weak and they can exploit that weakness.
Right. Like, remember when President George W. Bush had that, like, huge, obvious wire on his back? And we're not like, oh, that guy's weak.
Oh, man. And so he's going to deal with that soon. We've got Beast, who's there. Beast,
it makes sense he would agree to be on.
Yeah. We've got Black Widow, who had to change a wig, but she's going to be there.
Doesn't really make sense that Black Widow would want to be on.
She's
like,
just...
Again, like, Wasp would be the one to call.
Yeah, I thought it was maybe Wasp at first. She would be more... whatever.
Yeah, okay, so we've also... if somebody wanted to be on TV, it wouldn't be the former Soviet spy. It would be the, like, rich white lady.
Yeah. We also start to get a look at this villain for this issue. It's a guy named Fabian Stankovic, who's like living in his parents' basement. He won the lottery and he's like building stuff down there. And I was like, "Get off my back, Dad!"
Yes, he's actually been in 2 other issues of Avengers, as the notes point out, and this is the issue that explains like how he has the money for all the robots he's been sending at them.
I see. There we go.
So very important backstory for this joke villain that is he's written as a joke. We didn't mention, did we? Roger Stern wrote this one.
Yes.
Roger Stern of Death of Superman, of the Hobgoblin books, right? Is that what we read of his? For,
edited early X-Men with Chris Claremont.
Really good. Everything I've read of Roger Stern's really good, aside from his like co-writing credit on Marvel's Eye of the Camera. But
it doesn't count.
He's a good writer. He's a really good writer. Especially in this era. Like, check him out.
Well, I love
80s Spider-Man is so good, and Roger Stern is like the best writer on 80s Spider-Man, I think.
This book does something. We'll get to what he does later with the villain that I really liked, but we do see him backstage at the show, like in comically, silly mustaches and beards, like going around planting all the stuff he's going to be doing. And then we get to the interview, and during this interview, like they kind of start off with Beast dropping a bombshell, saying, "Hey, I'm quitting the Avengers to lead the Defenders." And so Letterman's like, "Hey, Hawkeye, what do you think about that?" And Hawkeye thinks it's the first question on his list, and so he's just kind of like off the whole time.
It's like the Avengers were formed in 1963 when Iron Man, and you're like, sorry, what?
Yeah. So that's just like a fun, silly little thing that they're doing. And then everything goes crazy. Fabian Stankovic attacks with his robots. And there's the steamroller that Letterman would use in his segments at that time. And so the audience is just like, oh, Letterman's doing a bit. Oh, how great.
And Paul Schaefer is there, his band leader is like wearing a Captain America shirt, being like, we got to keep playing music so people think it's a bit and they don't panic.
Yeah. Yes, I love that.
Yeah. Good job, Paul Schaefer. Way to stay on it. He's great. His Captain America shirt looked great as well. Good job.
I like how they're also kind of disappointed, like, oh, we're like Captain Thor, like they're no longer with the team. Oh, okay, well. I like that. Like that would absolutely happen in the real world if like the Avengers showed up and they have like the wrong team. Like especially like in the post Endgame world, like if like a TV show,
if like Ant-Man and Falcon showed up, you'd be like, who are these guys?
Yeah,
come on.
Yeah, come on. We also, so during this whole brawl where, everyone's trying to keep these robots under control, Fabian Stankovic goes to talk to Letterman and is like sitting there like he's a guest, like all he wanted was his fame. And so Letterman's like, I'm just going to keep him talking until we can get things under control here.
It feels a lot like the Joker movie at this point.
It does.
With De Niro.
It does. And Fabian Stankovic is like just talking. He is providing the captions of what his robots are doing and how they are like, the superheroes are going to be having to try to deal with it. And it's just like a clever way of doing the captions for all this fight scene. It gave me like a more investment into this fight than any other way that you can kind of tell. Yeah. It's like when a video game gives you the tutorial in like an interesting way, or like the controls are delivered to you by like an interesting character or something like that. It's just a fun way of doing it, and
instead of just caption boxes. And by the way, it's, the King of Comedy came out in 1982, so that's probably what they were referencing, not the joke.
Mm-hmm. Nope.
You think they were referencing?
Nope.
The Joker
Todd
movie?
Phillips invented that trope.
Okay, well, there you go.
I don't know where Robert De Niro became famous, but it certainly wasn't doing those types of movies.
Yeah.
So the Avengers win. They all are like, "Hey, cool."
Well, Letterman waits for him to be like, "Well, we're protected by the force field," and then Letterman's like, "Yeah, but are we protected from each other in the force, or something like that?" Like Fabian lets it slip that it's like, "No, we're inside the force field, so nothing can hurt us on the outside." And then Letterman hits him with a doorknob.
Good job, Letterman. Good team up. That's pretty much the end of this issue. There's a little, everyone says bye, and then there's like, oh, an oil spill? Let's go clean that up together. Fun adventure.
Yeah, it gets, the Late Show gets preempted by a news update about an oil spill, and Simon's like, no.
All right, so on to thing number 7. We get a whole issue of the Thing fighting this random villain. He's visiting, what's her name? The blind lady.
Alicia Masters.
Alicia Masters. He's visiting Alicia in the hospital. And on his way out, there's like a bank robbery. And I really love this villain. What was his name? He's got like big boots. He's like a Swedish blonde. Just kind of looks like a giant child. Not like a giant, but like the Thing's size, and it was just like a silly, very interestingly drawn thing. I really enjoyed it. Of course, the Thing wins, and at the end of this issue, there's a backup story where the Thing has been reading this the whole time, and he is pissed.
Yeah, it's like a 13-page fight where the Thing gets his ass kicked by this goofy-looking Swedish guy.
Mm-hmm. And he's like, "What?" And so he's mad that they've written him like this, that he is a loser who like finally wins in the end. Like, no. He's saying that happened the other day, and in real life, the way it happened was this guy like tried to do something and nothing worked, and so I just like flicked him with my finger and it was done.
Right. Because so his name was Goody Two Shoes, and he had atomic feet. Okay. So in real life, he's just a regular guy wearing like goofy shoes, and the Thing literally flicks him like pinky finger at him and knocks him out of his shoes.
And I should clarify, when I say in real life, I guess that's the 616 universe. Yes. Whereas this whole first story was like a weird Marvel Comics version within the universe.
Well, my understanding, and Chris, please supplement this entirely. My understanding is that the Fantastic Four in the 616 universe have commissioned Marvel to write comic books about them.
Correct.
And therefore, like, comics are then submitted as like evidence in She-Hulk issues.
Yes.
And so I guess technically the books we're reading are the 616. The real life of the Fantastic Four would not be the 616. If we're really like trying to dig deep into that. But
I don't know about that.
I disagree there. I think the books that we are reading are the real 616. But just this specific issue of the Thing,
right?
The first half was not 616.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So like what the Fantastic Four actually go through, and maybe the villain fights aren't as spectacular as we think they are. Those are not the 616. The written universe is. It's weird.
No, I think we're still disagreeing.
Okay,
here.
cool.
Yeah, I think I'm with Kia on this. This story is the one story where it is self-consciously not Marvel 616.
Yes.
Okay.
Every other Fantastic Four adventure is real 616.
Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yes.
I think I agree with you. I'm not saying it right.
Okay, got it.
But I love this, and I love that like he gets in John Byrne's face. Who John Byrne is goofy looking, but
and John Byrne actually drew this part.
Did he draw this part?
That's great.
Because Ron Wilson drew. Is it Ron Wilson?
Yes.
Is the artist who's referenced in this drew the main issue.
Yeah, but things just stomping through the Marvel offices, looking for anybody who's like, boy, I told Reed this was going to happen. They were going to take our stories. They were going to mess them up. I told them we got to keep an eye on these folks, make sure they don't like tell lies about us. And he is mad. It's just fun. Oh.
My favorite panel though is that when he runs, I know you. You're that Roger Stern guy. You ain't never wrote me, so I got no beef with you. And then Roger Stern's like, he didn't read that Christmas special. Good.
Yeah. Now I want to know which Christmas special that is. I don't know.
Christmas Treasury.
I have no idea, but it that did make me laugh. So I was like, I don't know what he's talking about. But that's great.
Yeah, good times.
And was Anna Senti in this one as well? I think she was. Wasn't
Yeah,
she?
she's also the assistant editor for this book and like the credits. I think maybe all the ones we picked, she had a hand in.
Except the last one,
Okay.
which I'm pretty sure is just Danny Fingeroth because he appears in it and says, I hope I didn't ruin it.
Yeah. This one was my favorite of the bunch here. I think y'all were saying maybe The Thing was your favorite.
Yeah, The Thing I think was my favorite because I just love, like the fight is fine and it's okay. And then it's like it gets so melodramatic at the end when Thing is like, I did it. I beat this weird Swedish guy.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, you should have. Like, this guy sucks.
But I mean,
Vince, what were you gonna say?
I liked all of this. I think that the fact that this is like the classic like Marvel Universe stuff that I love. That like all of these stories we read are completely disparate stories, but they all circularly reference each other. Like, like even it's like, oh well, the Beast is talking about quitting to go join the Defenders, and then he's joining the Defenders in the other issue we read. But then there's also the subplot of like we're going to San Diego, we're doing all these things. And though even like the Marvel bullpen stories are starting to reference each other. It's really cool, and I like that. And that makes me feel like it's a very like lived-in universe. If I was reading all that at the time, or even now, I'm like, hey, I'm picking up on these like fun like Easter eggs that they're referencing the same issues that I just read. Like I like that. It's really a lot of fun.
Yeah. And this one that we're about to get into does that a whole lot. Marvel Team Up number 137. This is the one where on the cover it's Aunt May and Franklin Richards versus Galactus. Have we talked about Franklin Richards much on this show? He's the kid from the Fantastic Four, Reed Richards and Sue Storm's kid. There's always some sort of... What's that?
I'm sure we've mentioned him before.
He must have.
He's their second kid, right? Because Valeria's
No,
younger?
he's there first.
No.
Valeria's younger.
Okay.
Valeria's the younger but smarter one.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's always some sort of thing where they're like, these two have massive power that we don't understand yet.
Spoiler alert, Sue is actually pregnant in this issue, but we don't know that.
Oh.
She's going to lose the baby, but then magically get it back later. So
Okay, well, that's a good thing magic.
But I mean, Franklin Richards, he's got a great comic by Chris Eliopoulos called Franklin Richards, Son of a Genius, which is basically just Calvin and Hobbes strips, but with Franklin Richards messing around with his dad's inventions. They're really well done. But yeah, it's just like, this is, if you see this on the rack, you're like, I got to check this shit out.
I gotta know what this is.
She's got her even like kind of like logo. It's funny. Like she's got her own lettering.
Yeah, there's a potted plant next to her name.
Yeah, and Spider-Man is like his face is in the top. Well, we didn't talk about those on the covers where like Spider-Man's head bubble is on the top with like, I thought this was my book. Oh, in the Avengers one, all the Avengers are turned away from the camera, so you just see the back of their heads.
Didn't Bob Harris say that he wanted to be the face of all those comics? I think he said that. I think he said that in his issue.
He may have, the Ralph Macchio we didn't mention on the Dazzler thing. They have him dressed as like the Dazzler in the box, and then the last page has just like a pinup of people drawing Ralph Macchio.
Oh, that's amazing.
I'm sure we've missed mentioning so many different little things, but it's just like it's so much fun when people are having fun like this. It's filled with just so much little goodness.
And Kia, I don't think we've ever talked about Marvel Team Up specifically, but it was ostensibly a Spider-Man teams up with another Marvel hero book. Like that was
for the most part, yeah,
for the most part. It doesn't have Spider-Man in the title, but that's essentially what it was compared to Marvel 2-in-1, which is always Thing with another
teaming
hero.
up with someone else. Yeah. What happens here? We start off with Galactus, his herald, who's Nova currently, isn't working out. He's hungry. So he says, you know what? I'm going to head to Earth, get myself another herald.
Talk to Reed Richards. He's in New York. I can sense his power.
Yes,
we'll just go there.
I can sense his power. I'm going to go
Nova
to Reed
appears
Richards.
to die, which I was like, this is kind of heavy for as goofy as this book will
get.
Yeah.
I was like, who is this? We get Spider-Man, who is at the circus.
Peter Parker,
Oh, yes, Peter Parker.
Peter Parker,
with
he won some tickets through the Bugle.
Peter Parker is Spider-Man?
Whoa.
No,
I have to tell everyone about this.
Yeah.
So Pete wins some tickets to the circus from the Bugle, so he invites Aunt May, and then Aunt May invites Mary Jane. He's like, why did she bring my ex-girlfriend to this thing? And why did Mary Jane say yes? I'm bothered by that.
I'm bothered by that.
Like I'm
that
okay
was what I was thinking about.
Like I'm okay with Pete being I'm okay with Pete being like, May, why are you meddling in my relationships? And I'm also even okay with May being like, y'all were too good together. Like, let's bring y'all back together.
Well,
I'm bothered by MJ saying yes.
I get the sense that MJ wants to get back together because at some point, like, Aunt May keeps dropping hints like, oh, it's so nice to all be out together. Oh, and Peter's like, come on, Aunt May, what are you doing? And MJ just says, hey, just let her have fun today,
They're going to be married within like 3 or 4 years, aren't they?
Yeah,
there you go.
They do get married in about 3 years or 4 years. This is so again like continuity moment. Mary Jane and Peter were dated in the 70s. He proposed to her and she said no, and then she moved to Pittsburgh and was like written out of the book for like 5 years. So he dated Black Cat and what's her name, the nerdy girl from the cartoon with the glasses. Vince,
Deborah?
I know. Yes.
Deborah.
Yes.
Deborah
Whitman.
Yeah.
Who? I don't know Deborah Whitman.
She was just a nerdy girl that he met in college.
She was also in the Michael Morbius, wasn't she? In the cartoon?
I think
everybody wanted Michael Morbius in that cartoon.
So yeah, dated her, dated Black Cat.
Nose? I don't believe it.
And then while he's dating Black Cat, Mary Jane moves back into town and is like, let's be friends. And he's like, well, this is awkward. So I think at this point, he's kind of still with Black Cat, but he's kind of separating from her. And, we'll end up back with Mary Jane, obviously. But yeah, I think Mary Jane, as we see, she's got a big bucket of popcorn and a hot dog. She just wants some incredible food.
She's just there for the free circus trip. She doesn't give a shit.
Exactly.
She loves circus. And so they get to their seats, and, Aunt May is talking to this little boy, and it's his first time at the circus, and he's so excited. And so she's, like, even happier, like, getting to be all motherly with some little kid.
You get the insight that this is how May was when Pete was little.
It's nice. It's nice. And you do see a shadowy figure, like wearing a hat and a cloak behind this kid as well. And I'm like, what is this now? Is there going to be some whatever? And then Peter recognizes a little kid as being Franklin Richards. And then you see that this cloaked guy is the Thing. And then the whole rest of the Fantastic Four are past him. And you're like, okay, all right, this is fun. I love this setup so far.
Yeah, I'm happy. This is a nice dumb coincidence that would only work in a comic, and I'm happy for it.
Yes. And they don't recognize Spider-Man because he's just Peter Parker. They don't know who he is. But they're having a good time, and then the Fantastic Four gets this alert that...
No, they don't get the alert. Reed is looking in front of a fan in front of him reading a newspaper, and he goes, oh, shit, there's something going down in San Diego that was printed in a newspaper. And he's like, we need to leave now. That's how he gets the news flash. He's not getting breaking news from Twitter. He's not getting, literally something had to go through a printing cycle.
Yes,
and the wire from a story in San Diego to get to the Bugle to publish it.
Oh, no.
This is at least 7 to 25 hours old.
And Sue is like, Reed, I just wanted to spend the weekend like a normal family. And he says, we are not a normal family. We have work to do. We gotta go. And the Thing is also just like, oh my god, I don't want to go.
There's no other damn superheroes that could do this.
He wants to see a dog dressed like a person. That's his objection to leaving.
That's all he wants to see. And of course, Franklin wants to go. And so, Peter Parker steps away. He's like, I got to take some pictures. And
Peter's also got to go. The Fantastic Four don't just have this handle. Peter also has to go to San Diego.
So the Fantastic Four is like still trying to figure out what they're going to do when Spider-Man shows up. And he says, hey, y'all can trust Aunt May. She offered to watch this kid.
What the fuck? I'm the only one who's a parent here. But like literally, like we are going to go on a superhero mission that we don't need to. And we're going to leave the kid with a strange old lady. Yeah. That we've never
Spider-Man
met.
Okay, yeah, but no. Think for a second that Spider-Man told you that it was okay to leave your kids with him.
But also Aunt May is like, I don't know you. Get away from me.
Yes.
No, I think May or somebody offers before Spider-Man does.
Yeah,
that's right.
May does offer before, and then Spider-Man vouches for
which
her.
Is also
she's
creepy.
like, "Hey, I don't like you, Spider-Man," and you're like, "Shut up, lady."
No, because he's like May is a great person. Like, I don't need your fucking help, Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine if you had to leave and the person next to you said, like, "I'll watch your kid for you" that you've never met before?
Yeah, but then Vince, imagine Spider-Man came to you and was like, "No, I'll vouch for them."
He's a menace. He's a menace.
Okay, now Vince, I want to ask you: if Spider-Man came up to you and said, "You and I are going to go on an adventure, and this person that I trust is going to watch Bruce," what would you do? Would you go on an adventure with Spider-Man, or would you say no to Spider-Man?
Which Spider-Man are we talking about? Like,
you don't know.
Whichever one you want.
If it's Miles Morales, he seems cool. Like, he's got the arm trick, and he's like, "Yo, man, it's gonna be all right. I vouch for this Aunt May character." I'm like,
okay,
all right, Miles, I'm on board. Peter, I don't know about. I'm not.
You say no to Peter Parker Spider-Man.
Adult Peter Parker Spider-Man, yeah. Teenage Miles Morales, on board with.
What about Otto Octavius in the body of Peter Parker, where he calls you a fool 3 times?
Yeah. I mean, if he's like, "Fool, why aren't you leaving your child with this old lady?" I'd be like, "Yeah, I agree.
You're right.
You're right. I do respond to negging."
So they go off to their adventure, and everyone's hanging out at the circus now with MJ. MJ kind of disappears for most of this book, but you've got Aunt May and Franklin. And then Galactus shows up. He says, I feel Reed Richards' energy here at this circus. Feels a little weaker, feels a little different, but it's got to be him. Turns out he's
I do get vibes of Magneto showing up at the Baxter Building as an old man when Galactus shows up at the Baxter Building and he's like, "Where's Reed?" He's so pathetic.
He is. He's so sad. But he finds Franklin instead, and he's like, "Hey, you're going to work just as well. I'm going to give you the power." But I guess Aunt May steps front to protect him, and Aunt May receives the power cosmic and becomes Golden Oldie. That's her hero name. And so Franklin is like, "Hey, you're hungry. Here, I know. Have some of my Twinkies. I guess they're Twinkles in this universe. Have some of my Twinkles." And he gives him a pack of Twinkles. And
this starts to really feel like a Hostess Cupcakes ad.
It does, absolutely. I'm going to read you 2 panels in a row. The first, this is Galactus. His first panel is saying, "This morsel is useless to me. I ingest it, and its effect is ... nothing." And then the next page, "Hold! I'm mistaken. There are energies within the morsel that replenish my hungering system." And then all of a sudden, Galactus is addicted to Twinkles. All he can do is to sate his hunger is just eat more Twinkles. And so Golden Oldie flies all around Manhattan, collecting all the Twinkles she can find until Galactus says, "You have to go
She starts
further."
by going to her own cupboard in her own house. And Nathan, her boyfriend at the time, is like, "Aunt May, is that you?" And she's like, "Maybe."
And they're like, "Oh, can you give us that kind of youthful power?" She's like, "Believe me, you don't want it. This is a curse."
So stupid.
And so Galactus is like, "You got to go further than Manhattan." She's like, "Queens?" So she goes, she goes everywhere.
May has a very limited worldview.
Yeah. Eventually, she goes all over Earth until Galactus has all the Twinkles on Earth, and she has to go further. So she goes looking for uninhabited planets. She finds a giant planet that is a giant twinkle that's in its wrapper. She runs into this other space creature that looks like the Pillsbury Doughboy.
Yep,
If the Pillsbury Doughboy has
this is, I don't even know if this is
God.
before or after Ghostbusters 1. It's right around the same time.
Oh yeah, it looks very much a little bit like and
man, I think it would have been right before, unless I'm wrong about the dates. Unless there was like promo, like trailer footage of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Because when did Ghostbusters come out?
84-ish, right? It's not 82.
Yeah, right around the time.
It's around the same time.
Know.
But yeah, I was getting definite like Ghostbusters, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, or Pillsbury Doughboy. Yeah.
So it came out in June 1984, but like unless they saw the trailers, I don't know how they would know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Weird. And so this Doughboy looking thing is like, no, I made this. You can't no one's gonna take this away from me. Like, this is my planet. It's there to be appreciated. And so they're Golden Oldie and this Doughboy. Did we get this Doughboy thing's name? I don't know. But it's a great design, very marshmallowy, and Galactus shows up, and this chef who like prepared this planet of a meal is like, finally, you're the one who should eat it. And Aunt May has a great idea to make this guy the herald instead. And Galactus is like, you know what? That makes sense. Can't argue with that logic. And so he makes this Doughboy guy the new herald. Aunt May gets to keep the power, but can go home. As soon as she gets back to Earth, Franklin Richards just absorbs the power cosmic from her. The Fantastic Four and Spidey get back, and they're like, some editor with trouble in San Diego. It's fine. Dazzler took care of everything. And then Galactus pops in and say, hey, anybody got a glass of milk? Wink. And the end of the issue, except then Peter Parker wakes up and is like, whew, glad that was all just a dream. And then editor Danny Fingeroth wakes up and is like, oh boy, I'm glad that was all just a dream.
I was worried I made a terrible issue of Marvel team up.
And then editor Jim Shooter wakes up with his Garfield doll in hand and says, whoa, Garfy, woof, glad that was all just a dream. I thought they'd ruin my comic. And then Stan Lee wakes up and goes, whew, I'm glad that was all just a dream. Any true believer knows that Galactus doesn't drink milk. And then Galactus wakes up and he says, oh, glad that was all just a dream. I need some milk. And then all the readers wake up and they're like, glad that was just a dream. That was terrible. So, yeah.
Like literally the entire last page is just people waking up from dreams. I love it.
Wonderful. It's wonderful. It's so much fun. Good job, Assistant Editors Month. Good job. Yeah. This was a fun time. I don't have anything else to say about it. It was just like, if you can't tell how fun it was just from us talking about it, then I don't know.
I think it was, it's like mildly in continuity comics that are like self-aware about like a peek behind the curtain. It's silly. It was comedy comics. It was fun. It was comedy comics that are literally 36 years old that I still like feel like cracked me up. So
it worked. Yeah, it's not like we were talking about with Brand X where everything is super topical and like referential.
Like even the idea of like Letterman, who I know who Letterman is, I'm not familiar with his like 70s and 80s show that much. Like
I would say that
show
comic
host.
it's still enjoyable if it wasn't Letterman. Yeah,
it's just a talk show host. It would work.
Yeah, I do think it works better if you know who like David Letterman is and like why it's so like goofy. It fits that.
Sure,
but it's not relying on Letterman's jokes at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I do. One thing I appreciate about all of these is that there are not that many like jokes. You know, like it's literally comedy of the absurd of like the situation. You know, like the Goody Two Shoes thing is like it's all played as completely straight action, and then the comedy is Thing being like, what the hell?
Right.
Like it's all the like very real reaction to that. So it's not a like somebody walks in, says a joke, the crowd laughs kind of humor, which I think comics that we've read for the show have not been good at doing that.
No,
right. I mean, because the thing is like, Spider-Man's supposed to be super quippy, and Spider-Man being quippy rarely works for me. But this worked for me, and like I think you're right. I'm glad you clarified that, like, because it's absurd the idea that Aunt May turns into a Herald of Galactus called Golden Oldie, and then like solves some Twinkie problems. Like that's stupid, and I enjoy it. Like I'm here for that, and I'm here for people having like fun and not taking comics too seriously.
I'm not gonna lie. I wish it was canon. I wish this.
I do
was
too. I really do
canon.
too. Like every now and then, like when Aunt May died, like it was briefly eulogized. Like she was
Galactus appears at the funeral.
Mm-hmm.
She was a good herald. She fed me when no one else would.
Yes, she found my. She was not the greatest herald, but she helped find me my greatest herald, and for that I will always appreciate her. Thank you, Aunt May.
Oh my god! Just imagining Galactus in like a black suit cracks me up.
Oh man, or maybe with like a veil, like a black veil. I think would be fun. All right, I think we got to get on to JLA. There were so many more comics too that we couldn't read. I might even go looking into some of these other ones here to see what's out there.
Yeah,
but
I don't know if they did this in other years as much as they did in '84.
Right.
This was this one they famously kind of went all out, and I do like we talked about it already. I do love the. You can tell that it's a small enough company that everybody's talking to everybody. You know, they're like, okay, this guy's going to be here and do this, and so like they know kind of where everybody is, which is very cool.
Yeah, and I don't know if we really talked about the creative teams. Like Anderson did, I think Daredevil, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's her big one.
And Mike Carlin was an assistant editor on a lot of these. He ended up doing a lot of DC work throughout the last few decades. I think he's a DC animation now, but I know his name all over DC Comics for the last 20 years. So a lot of these editors ended up being big deals. Subsequently.
Bob Harris we already mentioned. But it's funny. I don't know if Jim Owsley had stepped away, but he is on the list of assistant editors in 1983. But I never saw him. He's Christopher Priest, so you recognize him. He would be the one black guy there, other than Ron Wilson, who appears in the Thing issue. But I don't think we ever saw him. I don't know if he just didn't want to be in the cartoons of everybody or what. But I thought that was weird because everybody else had like a caricature.
Weird. There you go. All right. So should we get on to JLA Avengers now? Yeah. Number 4. This was the last issue of our whole DC versus Marvel thing that we've been reading. This team up, they finally got on the same page last issue to fight Metron. Is that his name? Yeah.
Well, they don't actually fight Metron. He's like behind the scenes.
It's I got to be honest. This last issue, I was a little bit more into the story going into it. It felt like a whole lot of filler, just a lot of different various fight bits. Nothing that really grabbed my attention. Did anything? Yeah, go ahead.
So I agree with you absolutely, but also at the same time, this didn't feel like much of a unique like DC and Marvel pairing. It felt like the final issue of a full comic universe event. So it felt like it felt like a full Marvel event or a full DC event where just all the heroes team up and like have something to do, but there wasn't anything particularly unique about like, oh well, isn't it cool to see? I mean, like Superman does hold Mjolnir and Cap's shield at one point,
and it's on the cover, so you kind of know it's coming.
But there's not like anything major that like I think finds unique things to say about each other's universes.
To me, and I don't know this to be true, but it really felt like George Perez plotted this because it's just fighting and then like character moments on top of the fighting. Like it's all just showing off like a bunch of different characters interacting. And the other thing that makes me think that is he does drop the classic Teen Titans in at the beginning of the issue for no reason. Just to be like, oh, we're trying to hold off all these horrible things happening. And then it cuts to like the Avengers and the Justice League, like raiding the, stronghold or whatever.
Yeah. And so like to that point though, like, I think you're right. I think it's mostly fights, but I think it's better than most event comics final issues.
It is.
Like, I think it's pretty solid. I think the action's able to follow. It's not like, oh my god, did they really fucking do that shit? And like nobody dies, like nothing really like major happens there, which is good. There's nothing really status quo changing. There's cool things like they go to this stronghold that's made out of like a dead Galactus though, so the visuals are cool. And Perez,
he didn't have any Twinkies, and so that was his downfall.
Yeah.
But Perez draws the shit out of it. I feel like Perez puts way too many panels per page still. He doesn't let his art breathe, but I do like his art.
Yeah, the end also feels a little anticlimactic with like, hey, it's done.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah, I feel like this, like most event comics, like it's more fun in the middle or at the beginning of the establishment of the premise, and the wrap up is kind of like meh.
Except what happened with Marvel vs. DC. The end was the best. So here's what I'm saying. You take the end of Marvel vs. DC, you slap it onto the end of JLA Avengers, and that's like a great miniseries right there.
Yeah. And I loved the touch because they've been mentioning it, but it does make the book confusing that like Scarlet Witch like appears in her 90s costume, and like Captain America turns into his US agent costume. Like,
there was one point where Batman's fighting somebody, and in the middle, like you see his costume changing to the other one, and it temporarily distracts him, and that kind of thing.
Superman changes to his electric form.
That was fun because like Thor, somebody was like, "Who the hell is this?"
Yeah, there was fun little bits all throughout, which was neat. But yeah, I don't really have much else to say about it. You know, we've talked a lot about Marvel versus DC and all that kind of stuff for a few months now. I think I've said all there is for me to say.
It's fun. Yeah. It was still fun. I think it was interesting, worth reading. I still feel bad that because it's through two publishers, like it's hard to keep on bookshelves. Yeah. But like this is something like if you're like looking for something with a bunch of superheroes, like this is one I would give to people. Even though it's kind of hard to follow, I guess. It's easier to follow than DC versus Marvel. And I think of all the events we've read, and we've read a lot now, guys. Like, we've read Crisis, we've read Secret Wars, we've read this, we've read DC versus Marvel. I think we had All-Star Superman in the middle there, which was really good. Like, this one I think was...
I wouldn't call that an event, though.
No, I wouldn't either, but like, yeah, so it kind of harmed my thesis. But, like, this one's pretty solid. I didn't feel like it really, like, dragged compared to like a lot of the other ones that we've read. Like I felt Secret Wars really dragged in the middle. So
But and I will say, you know, it is all a big fight, but it does do a good job. And again, that's why I think it's a collaboration of having. I mean, you can tell that Busiek likes all of these characters. You know, if it was like, you know, if Brian Michael Bendis, and I know I already shit on Secret Invasion earlier, but if he were to write
this, terrible. It's fucking terrible.
He would write the Justice League as a bunch of goofs, you know, like because he doesn't have any respect for those characters.
That's true.
But so like he does a good job of like, you know, at the end it's Flash and Hawkeye like working together to like fake out the bad guy, and it feels true to both of their characters. And then you have Hal Jordan like separating the planets, and so like he gets a moment, and so there is this like, hey, like all the characters are true to the like Wonder Woman and She-Hulk have like a little moment. Like I do appreciate that it, you know, and if you liked Avengers, Endgame and Infinity and all that, it is because you already knew who these characters were. You knew they were going to get in like the last 45 minutes was just going to be fighting. Like this is what all this was going to be for. And then the fact that it was true to what the characters, you know, do, like they're not suddenly different, you know, and like Iron Man builds a bunch of cool stuff. And like Batman has a line when he's like, I'm just, you know, sad I had to take all the, you know, power out of the cannons, and Batman's like, good, because I don't like guns. You know,
it's all the greatest hits. The greatest hits.
It's all these characters that if you like them, you'll enjoy this. If you don't know who these people are, you're like, all right, well, I guess the good guys won.
Yeah.
There you go. Yep. The whole thing at the end, it's dedicated to Mark Grunwald. Why was this dedicated to Mark Grunwald?
He passed away. He passed away during.
Oh, it was right around that time.
No, he passed away during DC versus Marvel.
Yeah.
He died, in 1997 or 8.
Trying to get DC and Marvel like to publish something together.
Yeah, and he had been trying to get the book done for a long time.
Mm-hmm. Well, there we go. I feel like though, like perennially bringing this kind of concept back every 10 years, I think would be good.
I think it's great. Yeah.
You know, like
it's always
having the publishers work together, having the editors work together. Share some pieces. I think that Flash Hawkeye moment is probably like the peak. Like that feels because like I feel like Endgame did like fights really well, but I feel like that's a really good point, Chris. I feel like that scene works really well for that fake out.
Yeah. But I think at this point we do have to talk about what we're doing next time. Glad we mentioned Mark Grunwald a few times here because we are reading Squadron Supreme, which is definitely a lesser known kind of series. I think you never hear it in the you know, common kind of lexicon.
I remember. I don't know a darn thing about it. I remember it's not Squadron Supreme. Is it just Supreme by J. Michael Straczynski?
Supreme Power. That was kind of like the Ultimate Universe version.
And then they crossed over with the Ultimate Universe at one point before the 616 did.
Yeah. But yeah, Squadron Supreme is basically like they existed before this miniseries that we're going to mention as well. They're basically like every time that Marvel needed like a DC ripoff, Squadron Supreme would be their go-to. They started as a Squadron Sinister. It was like an evil version of Superman called Hyperion, an evil Batman who was Nighthawk. But then eventually, like, they met good guy versions of these from other universes. And so there's just kind of this idea that multiple other universes exist with these characters who are just the Squadron Supreme.
Right, and it's very much a like Earth 2 kind of thing, where it's like they're from another universe where the Squadron Supreme are the heroes of their world.
Right.
So I don't know anything about this. So this is basically, but it's basically like Marvel if they publish like archetypal heroes like how DC typically has.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so this 12-issue miniseries was from 1985 by Mark Grunwald, art by a few different folks we'll talk about. But it was a 12-issue miniseries of just them in their own universe, dealing with their own stuff. And then also just kind of gets a little bit political with them saying, why don't we take over? A lot of the same ideas that Watchmen did the following year.
So this is mid-'80s?
This is mid-'80s, yeah. This was a year before Watchmen, which is always interesting because they do tread a very similar kind of path. But Squadron Supreme has a lot more of a kind of typical comics delivery to it compared to like the real genre-bending kind of version of Watchmen. So it's going to be its own thing. I've read this a lot. I really enjoy it. I'm hoping it holds up because I haven't read it in a long time. But it was Mark Grunwald's magnum opus. When he died, his ashes were mixed into the ink that was used to print the trades of this. So it was pretty important for him.
It's all on Marvel Unlimited, and this is again our long read.
Our long read. We're gonna do this one issue at a time. Yeah. We might even want to read. There's like a one shot that came out afterwards a few years later called Squadron Supreme: Death of a Universe. We can figure that out when we get closer to it. I don't know if we'll read that. But definitely at least the first 12. But yeah, we'll talk more next time once we start that. We're also going to be reading for a regular read, something a bit more modern here. We're going to Rat Queens, the first 5 issues. It's started in 2014, nominated for Eisner's. Just a real good kind of fantasy world setting. I've heard some great things about it.
Same here. I know that my wife Kimberly always puts out like calls to be like, "Hey, I'm looking for some books to read." And one of her friends always is putting out, "You need to read Rat Queens. You need to read Rat Queens." And I'm like, I don't know a darn thing about this. Is it Image? is it Image? I don't even know what publisher it is.
It is Image, yeah. And I should clarify, I've heard good things about it. Also, I've read some of it and really enjoyed it. It went on a hiatus in the middle, so I kind of fell out of it. But I'm excited to check it out again and get into it. I think y'all are going to like it as well.
Okay, cool.
Written by Curtis Wiebe, art by... I didn't write it down. Roke Upchurch. But yeah, again, we'll talk more about that next time. But I'm excited to get into 2 different new things next time. Wow. But anything else we got to mention for it now, Chris? How are things going with your Stupid Minds? Did y'all do another episode recently?
Not recently. We will be doing another episode. We may be doing one last worst of 2019, or we may be crossing over into worst of 2020. I think I talked about it last time, but the Goldfinch episode is out. It is very long, much like the movie, which is like 2 hours and 40 minutes. Our episode is not that long.
That's good. Okay.
A lot of things happen. Very funny.
Great. Vince, what's new with you?
I've got nothing. School started this week though for my son, first grade. So we're doing that. So that's top of mind. But I've been reading real book or not real books. I've been reading prose books lately. So that's
wow.
I know I've been reading.
I can't believe you would insult comics like that.
I know.
I just did. We just talked about Aunt May feeding Galactus Twinkies, and you're going to talk about
real books.
You're saying that's not literature?
Yeah, I know, right? I'm so sorry. That's the propaganda talking. Don't anybody ever tell you that comic books aren't real books.
You know what? It's too late.
I fucked up.
Vince,
I fucked it up.
Vince, I don't love you, Vince.
All right. Wow. I still love you too.
Chris, Chris, I love you.
All right. I'll give you some Twinkies later, but that's as far as we'll
go. My love got me something. Right. All right, y'all. And listener, thank you. We love you as well. We hope you're well. Oh, yeah. What prose book did you read, Vince? I cut you off.
I read Moriarty by Anthony Horowitz. Anthony Horowitz created like Foyle's War and Midsummer Murders. And it was commissioned by the Conan Doyle estate. It's about after Holmes and Moriarty passed away at the Reichenbach Falls, an American Pinkerton and a Holmes fanboy try to solve a mystery in the wake of Moriarty creating a crime gap in London. Oh. It's fun. It's 300 pages. It's it's a breezy read. Like Kindle's like you can read this in 4 hours. I'm like, don't insult me, Kindle. But it was not a long read, but it was super breezy. Fun.
Great, listener. Check that out if you like crime gaps.
Check out your library though. Like holy shit! Like, I haven't been able to go out to my library in this pandemic, but there's so much digital stuff on Libby and Overdrive and Hoopla that like you can get sent to your Kindle. So I highly recommend just like going and searching any comic book between those 3 services. Hook them up to your local library and see what you can find. Any book that you've probably heard of that's good, check it out.
Yeah,
go do it. All right. This outro has lasted way too long because we already did all the regular outro stuff. Yep. So, bye.